Good evening. Tonight we begin with something forgettable yet essential. Therapy and the unspoken words within sessions, but not as you imagine. No dramatic revelations or emotional confrontations. This time you'll just be you. An ordinary person living among whispered confidences and meaningful silences. So before you settle in, like the video and subscribe if this truly speaks to you. Now, adjust your light, take a deep breath, and let's journey through the secrets of the mind together. Lies, you're sitting in a room that feels both familiar and strange at once. The chair beneath you has a slight give to it, not uncomfortable, but not quite like your favorite spot at home either. The soft ticking of a clock somewhere behind you marks the passage of time, each second stretching into the next like honey dripping from a spoon. Your therapist sits across from you, their expression gentle, attentive, waiting. There's a question hanging in the air between you, and you feel the weight of it pressing against your chest. "How was your week?" they ask, and the simplicity of the question almost makes you laugh. How was your week? How could you possibly condense the complexity of 7 days, 168 hours of existence, into a neat package of words? You could tell them about the moment on Tuesday when you stood in the kitchen at 3 a.m. staring at the wall, feeling nothing and everything all at once. You could mention the panic attack that gripped you on Thursday during a meeting, how you excused yourself and breathed into your cupped hands in a bathroom stall until the world stopped spinning. You could describe the hollowness that has taken up residence in your chest, the one that makes even your favorite songs sound like they're being played underwater. But instead, you smile slightly and say, "It was fine. Nothing special." The lie slips out easily, comfortably, like putting on an old sweater. You've been wearing it for so long that sometimes you forget it's not your skin. The therapist nods, perhaps sensing the untruth, perhaps not. That's the thing about lies in therapy. They create a gentle fog obscuring the landscape of your mind from the very person who's supposed to help you navigate it. Imagine for a moment what it might feel like to tell the truth instead. Picture the words forming in your mouth, unfamiliar and awkward at first, like speaking a language you're still learning. Actually, I'm not doing well at all. The relief that might wash over you, cool and cleansing, like stepping into a shower after a long, dusty day. The way your shoulders might drop slightly, released from the burden of pretense. The deepening of your breath as it no longer has to work around the obstacle of deception. In the soft light of this imagined honesty, consider why we lie to our therapists. It's not always intentional. Sometimes it's a reflex, a protective mechanism honed through years of social conditioning. "I'm fine" becomes the automatic response, the path of least resistance. Sometimes it's shame that guides our tongues, the fear that our truths are too ugly, too broken, too much. We worry that speaking our darkness aloud will somehow make it more real, more permanent. Or perhaps it's the paradoxical desire to be seen as a good patient, as if therapy were a test we could pass or fail. But therapy isn't a performance review. It's not a social call where pleasantries are expected. It's one of the few spaces in life where the social contract is different, where the usual rules of engagement are suspended. Your therapist doesn't need you to be polite, or likable, or put together. They need you to be real. Think of it this way. If you went to a doctor with a broken arm but insisted it was just a light sprain, they couldn't properly set the bone. If you visited a mechanic but downplayed the strange noise your car was making, they might miss the failing part. Your therapist is a professional trained to help with the specific machinery of your mind, but they can only work with the information you provide. The room is growing quieter now, the ticking of the clock fading into the background as your breathing deepens. Imagine each inhale drawing in courage, each exhale releasing the need for pretense. In this space between wakefulness and dreams, consider that honesty in therapy isn't about dramatic confessions or earth-shattering revelations. Sometimes it's as simple as saying, "I've been having trouble sleeping," or "I can't stop thinking about that comment my mother made," or even just, "I don't know how I feel and that scares me." As your limbs grow heavier and your thoughts begin to drift, picture yourself in that therapy room again. See yourself speaking one small truth, testing the waters. Watch as the therapist receives it, not with judgment or disappointment, but with gentle acceptance. Feel the subtle shift in the atmosphere, the almost imperceptible lightening of your spirit. This is the beginning of real work, real healing. The lies we tell in therapy are often the same lies we tell ourselves, and perhaps that's the most compelling reason to practice honesty in that room. It teaches us how to be truthful in the private chambers of our own hearts. As you sink deeper into relaxation, consider that each moment of honesty in therapy is a gift you give not only to your therapist, but to yourself. A small act of self-compassion, a quiet declaration that you deserve to be helped, to be seen, to be known. Pretending you're doing better than you are, the morning light filters through your curtains, casting long, soft shadows across your bedroom floor. Another day has begun, and with it, the familiar ritual of assembly, putting together the version of yourself that the world expects to see. You rise, shower, dress in clothes that suggest competence and normalcy. You practice your smile in the bathroom mirror, the one that reaches your lips but stops short of your eyes. It's convincing enough for casual observers, good enough for the performance of everyday life. Later, you'll sit across from your therapist, this smile polished to a high sheen. "I'm doing much better this week," you'll say, your voice carrying a brightness that feels foreign in your mouth. "I went out with friends on Saturday. I've been keeping up with my work. I even started that book you recommended." Each statement might be technically true. You did go out, though you spent most of the evening fighting the urge to leave. You have been keeping up with work, though it takes you twice as long to complete tasks that once came easily. You did start the book, reading the same paragraph over and over until the words lost their meaning. But the collage of these half-truths creates a picture that's fundamentally dishonest. It's like a movie set, a convincing facade with nothing behind it. And like a movie set, its only purpose is to create an illusion, to tell a story that isn't quite real. Why do we do this? Why pretend to be better in the very space designed for acknowledging when we're not? Perhaps it's the desire to please, to be the good patient who makes progress on schedule. Maybe it's the fear of disappointment, your therapist's or your own. Or it could be the hope that if you pretend hard enough, the pretense might somehow become reality, like a reverse placebo effect. If you act as though you're healing, perhaps healing will follow. Imagine now a different scene. You're sitting in that same therapy room, but this time you allow your shoulders to carry their actual weight. Your smile, if it appears, is smaller but more genuine. When asked how you're doing, you pause, giving the question the consideration it deserves. "Some things are better," you might say, "but I'm still struggling with sleep. And there are moments when the anxiety is so intense I can hardly breathe." Your voice is steady, not seeking pity, but simply stating facts as you would describe the weather or the color of your walls. In this alternate scenario, notice how the air in the room changes. There's a clarity now, a transparency that allows for real connection. Your therapist can see you, not the carefully constructed version of you that you think they want to see, but but the actual, complex, struggling, surviving you. And in being seen this way, there is a profound relief, like finally removing a heavy backpack you've been carrying for too long. Think of therapy as a garden. The words you speak are seeds, and your therapist helps you tend to what grows from them. If you plant seeds of pretend wellness, what can possibly grow? But when you plant seeds of truth, even difficult, painful truths, they have the potential to become something authentic and healing. As you continue to drift in this space between wakefulness and sleep, your body growing heavier with each breath. Consider the energy it takes to maintain the illusion of being better than you are. Think of all the attention and effort redirected to keeping up appearances. Energy that could be used for actual healing. Pretending to be well is exhausting, in a way that being honestly unwell is not. The pressure to show progress in therapy doesn't actually come from your therapist. It comes from within, from the part of you that's impatient with the messy, non-linear nature of healing, the part that wants to skip to the end where everything is better. But healing doesn't work that way. It's more like the slow changing of seasons than the flipping of a light switch. In the gentle darkness behind your eyelids, imagine giving yourself permission to be exactly where you are in your journey. Not better, not worse, just true. Picture the relief of setting down the weight of expectation, of allowing yourself to heal at your own pace, in your own way. Feel the quiet power in saying, "This is hard right now," or "I thought I would be further along by now and I'm not," or simply, "I don't know if this is working yet." As sleep begins to pull at the edges of your consciousness, remember that therapy at its most fundamental is a practice of truth-telling, not performance, not people-pleasing, not progress for the sake of progress, but the radical act of showing up as you are, unvarnished and real. In that authenticity lies the seed of all meaningful change. Pretending you're doing worse to get more help. The evening has settled around you like a weighted blanket, heavy and comforting. Your bedroom has transformed into a sanctuary of soft shadows and gentle sounds, perhaps the distant patter of rain against windows, or the subtle hum of a fan creating white noise that cushions your thoughts. As you sink deeper into this peaceful space, let's continue our journey through the landscape of therapy, exploring another hidden corner that's rarely discussed openly. Imagine yourself back in that therapy room. The familiar chair cradles you. The soft, indirect lighting creates an atmosphere of safety. But today, something different is happening. As your therapist asks how you've been coping since your last session, you find yourself adding darker shades to the picture than might be strictly accurate. The sleepless night becomes a week of insomnia. The moment of sadness while looking at old photographs becomes, "I can't stop crying whenever I'm alone." The occasional anxious thought about work transforms into, "I'm constantly paralyzed by worry." This embellishment, this careful amplification of your struggles, isn't entirely conscious. It comes from a place of genuine need, the fear that if you don't make your pain dramatic enough, loud enough, it might be overlooked. As if suffering exists on a spectrum, and only those at the extreme end deserve care and attention. Consider, for a moment, what drives this behavior. Perhaps you grew up in an environment where minor ailments were dismissed, where you learned that only the most severe pain warranted response. Unless you're bleeding or have a fever, you're going to school. A parent might have said, inadvertently teaching you that suffering must reach a certain threshold to be valid. Or maybe you've experienced having your emotional needs minimized. It's not that bad. Other people have it worse. Just cheer up. Until you learn to amplify your expression of those needs to be taken seriously. In therapy specifically, There might be a pragmatic element to this exaggeration. Mental health resources are often scarce, appointments too short and too far between. You might unconsciously believe that if your therapist truly understood the depth of your pain, they would offer more time, more solutions, more care. Like a person in a crowded emergency room, displaying their wound more prominently to avoid being overlooked. The soft light in your room seems to pulse gently with your breathing now, creating a rhythm that draws you deeper into relaxation. As your limbs grow heavier, consider the paradoxical nature of this behavior. By exaggerating your struggles in an attempt to receive more help, you actually make it harder for your therapist to help you effectively. It's like giving a map with deliberately distorted proportions to someone trying to guide you home. The landmarks are all there, but the distances are wrong, making the journey more confusing than it needs to be. Therapy works best when it's calibrated to your actual experience, not minimized, not exaggerated, but seen in its true dimensions. Your therapist needs to know where you really are to help you get where you want to go. If you present yourself as being in a deeper hole than you actually are, the rope they offer might be too long, the strategy misaligned with your real needs. Imagine, now an alternative approach, you're in the same therapy room, but this time, you give yourself permission to be precisely where you are. Not better, not worse, just accurate. I had one night where I couldn't sleep, and it scared me because it reminded me of when my insomnia was at its worst, you might say. Or there was a moment looking at old photos when sadness washed over me. It passed, but it felt significant. Or even work anxiety isn't constant, but when it appears, it feels overwhelming in the moment. Feel how different this is, the precision of it, the specificity. In this accuracy, your therapist can see not just the struggle itself, but its true shape and size. They can better understand its triggers and patterns. They can offer help that fits your actual experience, not an inflated version of it. As your breathing continues to deepen, your thoughts becoming more fluid and dreamlike, reflect on the idea that all pain deserves acknowledgement regardless of its intensity. A paper cut is not a broken bone, but it still warrants care. Sadness that doesn't meet the clinical threshold for depression is still valid sadness. Anxiety that doesn't constitute a disorder is still real anxiety. In therapy, there's no minimum requirement of suffering that you need to meet to deserve attention and help. The truth is, most therapists are trained to recognize that people often underreport their struggles due to shame or the desire to appear well. They're listening not just for what you say, but for the subtleties beneath your words. When you exaggerate, you make their job harder, not easier. You cloud the very clarity that therapy seeks to create. As sleep begins to pull at the edges of your consciousness, imagine the freedom that comes with being precisely yourself in therapy. No more, no less. Picture the relief of not having to maintain an exaggerated narrative, of not having to remember which aspects of your experience you've amplified. Feel the authenticity that becomes possible when you trust that your genuine experience, whatever its intensity, is enough to warrant care and attention. In the gentle darkness behind your eyelids, give yourself permission to be seen accurately. Your pain doesn't need embellishment to be worthy of healing. Your struggles don't need to compete with others to deserve attention. In the sacred space of therapy, as in the quiet sanctuary of your own heart, you have the right to be precisely, honestly yourself. Saying this is working great when it's not. The night has deepened around you, the world outside your window grown quiet. Inside there is only the gentle rhythm of your breath, the soft weight of your body against the mattress, and these words drifting through your mind like leaves on a slow-moving stream. As we approach the final aspect of our exploration, allow yourself to sink even deeper into this state of tranquil awareness. Picture once more the therapy room that we've been visiting throughout this journey. By now, it's become somewhat familiar. The texture of the chair beneath you, the quality of light, the particular silence that exists only in spaces dedicated to healing. You've been coming here for some time now, weeks, perhaps months. There's a routine to it, a pattern that has become comfortable in its predictability. Your therapist sits across from you, expression attentive as always, and asks a seemingly simple question. How do you feel our work together is progressing? And here it comes, almost automatically. It's going great. I think it's really helping. The words emerge smoothly, easily, like well-rehearsed lines in a play. They're what a good patient is supposed to say, aren't they? They're what keeps the relationship pleasant, what prevents disappointment or awkwardness. They're what allows you to nod and smile as you schedule next week's appointment, what lets you maintain the illusion that everything is unfolding as it should. But beneath those reassuring words lies a different reality. Perhaps you've noticed that week after week you seem to be discussing the same issues without resolution. Or maybe the strategies your therapist suggests just don't seem to fit your life, your personality, your particular struggles. It could be that there's something about your therapist's approach or even their manner that doesn't resonate with you, creating a subtle but persistent disconnect. Or perhaps most troubling of all, you leave each session feeling vaguely unsettled, unable to quite put your finger on why this relationship that's supposed to be healing instead feels slightly off. Yet still, when asked, you say, "It's working. Great." As your body continues to relax, muscles releasing their hold with each breath, consider why we do this. Why we claim therapy is working when our inner experience tells us otherwise. One reason might be a deep-seated aversion to confrontation or conflict. Expressing dissatisfaction feels dangerous, as if it might rupture the relationship entirely. There's the fear of hurting your therapist's feelings, as if they were a friend rather than a professional providing a service. Or perhaps it's about identity and self-image. To admit that therapy isn't working might feel like admitting failure. Your failure to do therapy right, to be fixable, to progress at the expected pace. It might seem easier to pretend all is well than to face the possibility that healing is more complicated, more non-linear than you'd hoped. There's also the investment to consider, the time, money, and emotional energy you've already poured into this process. Acknowledging that it's not working means confronting the possibility that those resources have been misallocated, a realization that can be painful to sit with. The soft darkness behind your eyelids grows more comforting now, a private space where truth can exist without consequence. In this protected realm between wakefulness and sleep, imagine what might happen if you were to speak your doubts aloud in your next session. Not dramatically, not as an ultimatum, but as a simple truth offered with care. I've been coming here for 3 months now, you might say, and I'm not sure if I'm seeing the changes I'd hoped for, or there's something about the approach we're using that doesn't quite click for me, or even just, I don't know if this is working the way it should, and I'm not sure what to do with that feeling. As you imagine speaking these words, notice what happens in your body. There might be a flutter of anxiety, yes. That's natural when we contemplate honest conversations. But there might also be a sense of expansion, of rightness, of finally aligning your outer expression with your inner experience. In the gentle drift towards sleep, consider that therapy at its core is meant to be a corrective experience, a relationship where patterns can be recognized, examined, and transformed. If you find yourself repeating in therapy the very patterns you're trying to change, people-pleasing, conflict avoidance, suppressing your true feelings, then the therapy isn't serving its purpose. A therapist worth working with will welcome your honesty about the process itself, seeing it not as criticism, but as valuable information that allows for adjustment and growth. Think of it this way. If you were taking a medication that wasn't relieving your symptoms, you wouldn't tell your doctor it was working perfectly. You'd report your actual experience so they could adjust the dosage or try a different approach. Therapy deserves the same candor. As your consciousness begins to float on the edges of sleep, remember that the right therapeutic relationship can hold your truth, even when that truth is about the therapy itself. A good therapist understands that fit matters, that approaches and personalities and dynamics all need to align for healing to occur. Sometimes finding the right match requires trial and error, and that's not a reflection on you or even necessarily on the therapist. It's simply the nature of human connection in all its beautiful complexity. The therapy room in your mind's eye is growing dimmer now, the details softening as sleep approaches. Before you drift off completely, hold this final thought. Honesty in therapy about your struggles, your progress, your doubts, and yes, about the therapeutic process itself is not just good practice. It's the very soil from which healing grows. Your truth, in all its messy, complicated, imperfect glory, is not an obstacle to overcome in therapy. It is the whole point. And so, I think you must be dreaming about all of this by now, so I'll just leave the fireplace glowing for you to feel comfortable and warm.